Greetings, dear viewers. Hope you all are doing great and are excited to learn. I am Ratna Pathak, a postgraduate teacher of English from Kendriya Vidyalaya Sangathan. Today, we are going to study the final session of the chapter, The Portrait of a Lady by Khushwant Singh. In the previous class, we learnt about the changing phases of the relationship between Khushwant Singh and his grandmother. Today, let us find out how the story develops further. Now, talking about the targeted learning outcomes. After this class, you will be able to understand the changing dynamics between the younger and older generations in a family. You will be able to appreciate Khushwant Singh's use of phrasal verbs and expressions which add beauty and charm to the text. Then, you will be able to understand and use the grammatical forms used in the lesson. And finally, you will be able to appreciate the descriptive narrative of an autobiographical account. Before we begin the next segment, let us have a quick revision of what we have learned so far. You should be able to answer these questions by now. The first question: the three phases of the author's relationship with his grandmother before he left the country to study abroad. And the next one: why was the author's grandmother disturbed when he started going to the city school? And how did the author's grandmother spend her days after he grew up? Okay, let's quickly talk about the phases of the author's relationship with his grandmother before he left the country to study abroad. The initial phase discusses the early childhood phase when he stayed with his grandmother. In this phase, he lived in a village and his grandmother looked after him from dawn to dusk. She got him ready for school, went to the school with him and came back with him. We noticed that they were together for 24 hours. The next phase was the time when they both moved to the city with his parents. Our story reaches a turning point here. In the city, grandmother could neither drop him to school nor could help him with his schoolwork as she did not understand English. Also, she did not approve the modern Western education. The final phase started when the author was admitted to the university. Since he was grown up by now, he got a separate room and no longer shared it with his grandmother. We find his grandmother becoming more aloof and silent by now. All day long, she was busy with the wheel, spinning all day and reciting prayers. Grandmother accepted this seclusion in silence. Coming to the reasons why the author's grandmother was disturbed when he started going to the city school are: women in Khushwant Singh's grandmother's time were never educated and especially not in English. They were only taught to read the sacred alphabet, religious scriptures and be adept at household chores. Khushwant Singh's grandmother could read the scriptures and understand them. It disturbed her a lot that her grandson was not being taught about God or scriptures. However, she was unable to comprehend Western thought, Western music, Western subjects and anything taught to him when he moved into an English school. She, in fact, almost stopped interacting with him when he started to learn music, Western music. She felt music to be having a loose association, that music was the monopoly of harlots and beggars, not meant for gentle folk. And now, dear students, let's quickly recap about how the author's grandmother spent her days after he grew up. Grandmother lived alone within the room and she accepted this loneliness silently. She never complained about her position or asked for the company of others. All day long, she sat at the spinning wheel and recited her prayers silently. In the afternoon, grandmother would feed sparrows in the courtyard for not more than half an hour. Moreover, she had completely accepted her position in the family and genuinely missed her village home. Let's read further now. When I decided to go abroad for further studies, I was sure my grandmother would be upset. I would be away for 5 years, and at her age, one could never tell. But my grandmother could. She was never sentimental. She came to leave me at the railway station, but did not talk or show any emotion. Her lips moved in prayer. Her mind was lost in prayer. Her fingers were busy telling the beads of a rosary. Silently, she kissed my forehead. And when I left, I cherished the moist imprint as the last physical contact between us. Let us analyze this paragraph. Some words to discuss from this paragraph are sentimental. It is a feeling of nostalgia, sadness or tenderness, an emotional feeling. The grandmother was not at all sentimental when the author was going abroad. This shows that over the years she had developed a sense of detachment with everyone. The grandmother was never one to be emotional. She was a calm and composed figure, the very image of a serene old woman. She would give an occasional hug, clasping of hands, and waking up for school, but she was never indeed a dramatic person. Another word we should discuss is rosary. This is a rosary. You can see that it is a string of wooden beads. It is used for counting prayers. Grandmother prayed continuously using a rosary. This shows her faith in the Almighty and submission to a superpower. Rosary is a symbol of grandmother's spirituality. Another word is cherished. Cherished means to hold something dear. Khushwant Singh cherished his grandmother's kiss on his forehead. He was not sure if his grandmother would still be alive when he comes back after 5 years. We must not forget that all this happened before India became independent. Communication was mostly through letters, and it took almost a month for a letter to reach India from England. Khushwant Singh went to London for his higher studies. Those days, it was not possible to travel this distance in a few hours. He was apprehensive about his grandmother's age and did not expect to find her alive after 5 years. So, he wanted to cherish the memories of his grandmother at the railway station. Let's read paragraph 9, which talks about reunion. But that was not so. After 5 years, I came back home and was met by her at the station. She did not look a day older. She had no time for words, and while she clasped me in her arms, I could hear her reciting her prayers. Even on the first day of my arrival, her happiest moments were with her sparrows, whom she fed longer and with frivolous rebukes. When the author came back after 5 years, he was relieved to find his grandmother alive. And the funny thing is, Khushwant Singh did not find her older. You must remember what he said in the beginning of the chapter, that his grandmother had always been old and wrinkled. He did not notice any physical change in her. You must have also noticed that grandmother again did not show her emotions. All she did was to hug the author and recite her prayers. It seems that she had achieved that level of spirituality where one becomes above joys and sorrows of this mortal world. Dear viewers, true happiness is achieved when we are with nature. Grandmother too found her true happiness with the sparrows. She had risen above all the joys and sorrows of human world. Let's read further. In the evening, a change came over her. She did not pray. She collected the women of the neighborhood and got an old drum and started to sing. For several hours, she thumbed the sagging skins of the dilapidated drum and sang the homecoming of warriors. We had to persuade her to stop to avoid overstraining. That was the first time since I had known her that she did not pray. Let us analyze this paragraph. Dear viewers, in this paragraph, we reach the climax of our story. You must have noticed a sudden deviation in the behavior of grandmother. The woman who did not approve of music taught in school was singing and drumming. This opens an important question. Did grandmother actually hate music, or was she prejudiced by the social conventions of the time? Remember that she was a widow. In pre-independence India, the widows did not enjoy many social privileges. They were expected to devote their life to reading of scriptures and doing household chores. Anything beyond these was a taboo. Her singing and drumming at the end make us question if she chose her life or just played a role in the conservative patriarchal society. Maybe she loved music but followed society's rules and regretted it later. Or maybe she drummed to release her feelings for her grandson that she hid for so long. That is why she sang the homecoming of the warriors. So, grandmother sang and played the drum for several hours and had to be persuaded to stop. Let's read further. The next morning, she was taken ill. It was a mild fever, and the doctor told us that it would go. But my grandmother thought differently. She told us that her end was near. She said that since only a few hours before the close of the last chapter of her life, she had omitted to pray, she was not going to waste any more time talking to us. Let's analyze this paragraph. Dear viewers, grandmother was too old to take any kind of physical exertion. The singing and drumming of the previous evening took a toll on her health and she fell ill. After the drumming incident, she was so remorseful about her action that she spent her dying breath in an endless round of rosary praying and chanting. It almost felt that she had committed a terrible sin by giving in to her passion. This paragraph tells us few more things about grandmother. Grandmother seemed aloof and indifferent, but she was full of strong emotions. She celebrated the homecoming of her grandson by singing and drumming. It is clear that she liked music and she suppressed her desire to sing throughout her life. She finally gave in to her passion when her grandson came back after studying abroad. One more possibility can be that this action could be the outburst for holding back her emotions towards her grandson for so long. One more possibility can be that this action could be the outburst of holding back her emotions towards her grandson for so long. That is why she sang Homecoming of the Warriors. She was remorseful about her action of singing and drumming. This shows that though she showed the courage of breaking the societal norms for widows, she soon submits to it and is full of guilt. She feels that she had committed a sin and tries to atone it by continuing to pray till her last breath. Let's read the next paragraph, which talks about the final goodbye. We protested, but she ignored our protests. She lay peacefully in bed, praying and telling her beads. Even before we could suspect, her lips stopped moving and the rosary fell from her lifeless fingers. A peaceful pallor spread on her face and we knew that she was dead. Let us analyze this. Grandmother had lived her whole life following the societal norms strictly. She had lived a spiritual life without complaining or expecting anything from others. She suppressed all her feelings and emotions and appeared aloof. So, her giving in to the passion of singing and drumming at the end of her life was a very bold step which she immediately regretted. To atone for her sin, she did not talk to anyone. The family members wanted to talk, but grandmother preferred praying. She had lived a pure and spiritual life. She had developed a sixth sense that gave her a premonition that she was going to die. And after some time, she dies peacefully, holding a rosary in her hand. Let's read further, which tells us about mourning of the sparrows. We stopped halfway in the courtyard, all over the veranda and in her room, right up to where she lay dead and stiff, wrapped in the red shroud. Thousands of sparrows sat scattered on the floor. There was no chirruping. We felt sorry for the birds and my mother fetched some bread for them. She broke it into little crumbs the way my grandmother used to and threw it to them. The sparrows took no notice of the bread. When we carried my grandmother's corpse off, they flew away quietly. Next morning, the sweepers swept the breadcrumbs into the dustbin. Let us analyze this paragraph. Dear viewers, we see the family giving an emotional farewell to grandmother. The dead are paid respect in Indian culture. Grandmother's dead body was prepared for cremation. You must be wondering why her shroud was not white. She was given a red shroud. Red shroud is used for spiritual and saintly people. And we know that grandmother had lived a life which was pure and spiritual. Before sunset, she was cremated. The reference of golden sunset light after grandmother's cremation creates a divine aura symbolizing the journey of grandmother's soul to heaven. When the family was busy preparing for the cremation, we find something unusual happening in grandmother's room. The sparrows crowded around her courtyard near her corpse but never made a sound nor ate the breadcrumbs offered to him by Khushwant Singh's mother. They paid their final respect mystically to a real lady who fed them and cared for them. These sparrows give a delicate and heartfelt touch to the story. Now let us analyze the character of grandmother. Dear viewers, Khushwant Singh's story ends in a sad but peaceful note. Now let's understand a little more about grandmother's character in the story. The story begins with the physical description of the author's grandmother. She was a widow, so she had given up all the colors of her life. She followed the societal norms for the widows during pre-independence India and had given up all the worldly joys. She concentrated on her prayers and afterlife. Her life was limited to visiting temples and reading scriptures. So, she had given up all the colors of her life. She followed the societal norms for the widows during pre-independence India and had given up all the worldly matters. She concentrated on her prayers and afterlife. Her life was limited to visiting temples and reading scriptures. Khushwant Singh had always seen her in wrinkles, bent back and with a limp, stout body. It seems she never paid attention to her appearance. She represents the widowed old women of a time when paying attention towards look was immaterial. Grandmother looked after Khushwant Singh in the village. It was a challenging task for an old woman, but due to the love for her grandson, she fulfilled this duty happily. Grandmother was a woman who followed the societal conventions till the end of her life. She maintained an aloof, docile and non-complaining demeanor. She busied herself in taking care of birds and animals. We never find her indulging in meaningless things. She was an epitome of goodness, sacrifice and spirituality. Now let us talk about some symbols and imagery. Dear viewers, this story uses nice symbols and imagery. I would like to discuss three of these: rosary, spinning wheel and animals, that is dogs and birds. So, rosary, as you know, the rosary is always in grandmother's hand. It provides her an instrument of solace when she is disturbed due to the changes in her grandson's life and thus resulting in changes in their relationship. It is a part of her being. The author cannot imagine his grandmother without the rosary. It is a symbol of grandmother's spirituality. Now, talking about the spinning wheel. The spinning wheel symbolizes the hard-working nature of grandmother. She is either busy with her rosary or with the spinning wheel. She never wastes her time in idle gossip. The spinning wheel also symbolizes the self-sufficient nature of grandmother. Now, coming to the dogs and birds. Dogs and birds provide a refuge to grandmother in her solitude. She feeds the village dogs when she is left alone with the child in the village. She feeds birds when she is lonely in the city. This symbolizes that human beings take refuge in nature when they are disappointed by their fellow beings. Now, let us talk about some grammatical structures in the lesson, that is past perfect. Dear viewers, you must have noticed that this story has been written in the past tense. Can you guess why? Yes, you are right. The story is in the past tense because it happened a long time ago. We see the use of simple past and past continuous tenses throughout the story. I am sure you are familiar with these verb forms. Now, let us notice the following sentences from the beginning of the story. She had been old and wrinkled for the 20 years that I had known her. People said that she had once been young and pretty. She had always been short and fat and slightly bent. The verb forms used here is had plus V3. That is, the past participle form of the verb. This is the past perfect tense. The past perfect tense is used for something that had happened in the past and is important at a later time in the past. Dear viewers, now it is the time to recapitulate what we have learnt in today's lesson. The first thing we learnt, the author went abroad for higher studies and returned after 5 years. The grandmother was as indifferent while receiving him as she was seeing him off. Next, that evening she did a strange thing. Instead of saying her prayers, she collected women of the neighborhood and picked up a drum to beat and started singing the homecoming of warriors. The next day she fell ill and soon she passed away. All the sparrows she used to feed had gathered in the courtyard to mourn her death. They paid their final respects and flew away without eating the breadcrumbs offered to them by the author's mother. The story ends on a tragic note but leaves us pondering about our relationship with our grandparents and parents as they grow old. We have also studied the character of grandmother. She was a simple, peaceful, content and religious woman. The story vividly describes the changing relationship dynamics between a grandson and his grandmother. It can be seen as a loving tribute from the author to his grandmother. A beautiful read that portrays human relationships in a different light altogether. Then we notice the grammatical forms used in the lesson. The story used various forms of the past tense. The story we have studied today is a short story. You are familiar with the elements of a short story. Each short story has a plot, a setting, few characters, some themes and conflict. Now draw this story organizer in your notebook and fill it in. You have to fill in the characters, setting, theme, plot, climax and the values highlighted in the story. Before concluding today's lesson, I would like you to do this little assignment. Identify the places in the story where past continuous tense has been used. Write at least 10 such sentences in your notebook. Next one. Would you agree that the author's grandmother was a person strong in character? Justify your answer. The third question. What is the significance of drumming and singing that grandmother does before her death? Fourth question. If the author's grandmother had not lived a life following the societal norms, do you think he would have still called her a lady? Justify your answers. I hope you have enjoyed today's class. We have concluded the lesson, The Portrait of a Lady. I hope you will read the lesson again and complete the assignments. Happy learning to you. Thank you and have a great day ahead.